Okay, we're about to dive into something pretty wild. It's a source that offers a totally radical take on a pivotal moment in history, one that most of us think we know inside and out. So what this explainer is going to do is ask you to just set aside that story for a minute and let's look at the evidence from a completely different angle. And this right here is the central question that the analysis we're examining is asking. It basically treats this foundational religious event, well, not like scripture, but more like a historical cold case. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to follow the forensic trail of clues it lays out and try to figure out what it claims really went down in that cave. All right, so before we can really dig into this new argument, we've got to start with the basics. We need to revisit the story that pretty much everyone knows, the famous encounter in the Cave of Hira. Right, so the story, as it's almost always told, goes something like this. It's 610 CE. A man, Muhammad, is meditating in a cave, really troubled by the world around him. Suddenly, a terrifying presence, the Angel Gabriel, appears, and then a single command is spoken. This moment, as you know, is seen as the very beginning of a 23-year prophetic mission, the start of the Quran, and a new world religion. Okay, but here is where the source we're looking at just flips the script completely. It proposes that this wasn't the beginning of anything at all. In fact, it argues this was a terminal event, an intervention that was completely aborted. The mission, it claims, failed on day one. So how in the world do they build a case for that? Let's dig in. The very first piece of evidence this interpretation zeroes in on is a detail that, often gets glossed over, the sheer extreme physical violence of the whole encounter. And this leads us to what the source calls the effort paradox. Think about it. If all you want is for someone to repeat a few words after you, why would you need to get violent? It just doesn't add up, right? So why, according to all the historical accounts, was this angelic encounter so brutal? I mean, the accounts are really specific here. We're not talking about a gentle tap on the shoulder. He was squeezed, crushed 3 separate times to the point where he could barely breathe. So this interpretation argues that this has nothing to do with just mimicking a message. It's about demanding some kind of immense personal effort. It's like the angel was trying to physically break through a barrier. And that brings us to the single word at the very heart of this entire event, Iqra. The analysis we're exploring claims that the traditional understanding of this one word is the source of the entire massive misunderstanding. So here's the crucial point. The traditional translation is recite. Think about what that means. To recite something is passive, right? It's just echoing. It doesn't take much effort. But the argument here is that the word could also, and more accurately, mean read. And reading, especially for someone who can't read, is an act of grueling, exhausting, immense effort. Exactly the kind of effort that might be demanded with that much physical force. And if you accept that, it totally reframes Muhammad's famous reply, "Ma ana biqariya." Traditionally, that's taken to mean, I am not able to read, or I cannot read. But this analysis suggests it's actually a statement of identity, a refusal, something more like, I am not a reader, as in, I am not the kind of person who does that, and I'm not going to undertake the hard work to become one. And it goes even deeper. This source claims that the first 5 verses delivered in that cave, they aren't actually scripture at all. They're an argument. A tight, logical argument built around 2 powerful, completely contrasting metaphors. Okay, so the first metaphor is the clot, or alak. Now, yeah, it has a biological meaning, but this argument says that's not the point. It's symbolic. Think about a clot of blood. It's dark, it's opaque, it's unformed. It represents the human mind in its raw, natural, unlettered state. It's dependent, it's in darkness, completely without the light of knowledge. And then, immediately, the angel contrasts that darkness with the pen. The pen, in this view, stands for everything the clot isn't. It's recorded wisdom, it's clarity, scholarship, light. It's the tool that God gave humanity to escape the darkness of the clot and find enlightenment for themselves. So, you see the argument being made? It's like the angel is laying out a direct call to action. It's basically saying, look, you were created from this raw, dark clot. But God, in his generosity, gave humanity the pen, the tool to turn that darkness into light. So read, pick up the pen, engage with it. And this is where we get to the source's most shocking conclusion. Because Muhammad refused the method of the pen, because he wouldn't read, the angel's intervention was over. The mission failed. It was aborted right then and there. Now, to be really clear, this interpretation frames this as a conscious choice. It was a rejection of the hard, active work of scholarship, of actually engaging with all the wisdom that was already written down in the world in favor of a more passive, intuitive experience of just waiting for answers to be given to you in a cave. And what happened right after this supposed failure? The immediate result? Absolute silence. This argument points straight to that historical period known as the Fatra, the cessation, where for a long time, maybe even years, absolutely nothing happened. No more messages. This analysis presents that silence not as some kind of divine test, but as the logical outcome of a mission that was aborted. It's simple. The student refused the curriculum, so the teacher left the classroom. Okay, so the obvious question is, if the mission was a total failure, how on earth did it become the foundation of a major world religion? Well, this analysis argues it all comes down to the advice Muhammad got right after he ran out of that cave. This is where a moment of comfort gets reframed as a moment of, tragic misdiagnosis. The argument goes like this. A terrified Muhammad runs home and tells his wife Khadijah and her cousin Waraka what happened. But they completely misinterpreted the event. They didn't see this clot versus pen argument about literacy. What they saw was a much more familiar story, a traditional prophetic calling. They actually took his failure to read, his illiteracy, and reinterpreted it as the very qualification he needed to speak for God. And that right there is the ultimate conclusion of this whole interpretation. The idea that the entire faith that followed was built on this one foundational misunderstanding. The angel came, it argues, to point humanity toward the library of existing wisdom, the written word, the pen. But instead, the community went in the opposite direction and built a new faith on the spoken word, on recitation. So that leaves us with the core, provocative question this entire analysis poses. Was the command in that cave really an instruction to read the existing pen, to join the great ongoing conversation of human wisdom that was already written down, and not an instruction to recite a new book from scratch? It's a really challenging reinterpretation and definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.